The opinions expressed on this program are those of the program host and guest and are not necessarily those of this station, management, staff, and sponsors. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time now for the Crown Car Care Show. Call in with questions and comments, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. Now, here's your host.
Welcome, everybody. It's a beautiful day here in Martin County on July 10th, 2024. Sitting in the studio with me is my longtime friend and associate with this radio show, Big Frank. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, it's good to be with you in the big seats once again.
Yes.
To do an automotive informative show to remind our listeners how important Crown Car Care is in their lives.
Yes.
Yes.
And we have quite a show. We are going to unravel and uncover and flesh out the myths and the misnomers of the 6.4 Power Stroke diesel.
Okay.
Which can be your best friend, and it also can be your worst enemy. And we're going to talk about that today. It's very important because diesels, as you know, are very expensive. And when you buy a diesel, you need to know what quirks, idiosyncrasies, and pluses or minuses you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Because it can be treacherous waters to navigate if you don't know that. But in the meantime, I hear that what's on the Tesla front?
Tesla. Well, Tesla's stock is going up because their car sales seems to be doing well.
Good.
And also their introductions of new vehicles. They got the Model 2.
Yeah, what models do they have coming out?
They got the Model 2 coming out. So that's going to be selling at about 20,000. They've got their Robo Taxi coming out.
Wow.
And so, so, of course, the full self-driving upgrades, everybody's excited about
I've got that
yes.
on mine, but it's still, you have to, they call it a NAG. NAG is what it is, the nomenclature for the word they use. And it means that even though you're in self-driving, FSD is what they call it, full self-driving, you have to constantly exert a little pressure on the steering wheel and it shows the input sensor, steering angle sensor in the steering column that you as a human are attached to it.
Right.
Basically you're moving against what it wants to do slightly.
You are monitoring and you're actively monitoring what's going on.
And what a lot of people don't know is there's a camera right on top of the rear view mirror. It's looking at you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Don't do any grooming, nose picking or anything like that because they're all laughing at Tesla. They watch.
Well, and so it's the algorithm in the computer that, and it's learning exponentially because of the millions of cars that are on the road. Every time a owner corrects a problem.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes.
It's a neural network.
Yes.
And it's new.
Yeah.
It's only been out for two iterations of what I would call software upgrades, which they do like every month or every other month. And it's new and no one else has that. It self-learns by looking at the behavior of, correcting, like, for example, my car, when I go home, it always wants to get into the wrong lane. So I put my turn signal on and correct it. And now it doesn't do it anymore. So it learned.
Yeah.
It learned. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I wonder, there's a few people I know. I wish I could just show them the correction and they would learn it. But they never do.
No.
My dogs specifically.
Oh, yes.
You show them outside, you give them a treat, and they still want to go duty inside.
I know.
I don't know why. I think they're doing it to spite.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do tricks too.
They do it because they can. Yes.
Well, that's a good reason. Reason enough.
Oh, my goodness.
I've been reading a lot in the last couple of weeks about the solid state batteries, are starting to become mature and evolve to the point where they can put them into production on vehicles.
Yes.
And the charge rate or how long, it's like 5 minutes, full charge with no degrading of long-term battery kilowatt per hours.
Right. QuantumScape is one of several companies that is actively working on that. And it's It's an amazing process. But in the meantime, utilizing existing technologies,
Yes.
a company, or actually no, a school, Oregon State University chemistry professor and his staff developed a unique mix of fluorine and phosphate anions that allow reversible conversion between ion power and lithium fluoride. What does all that mean? Is they can lower the cost of traditional battery manufacturing substantially because they're using iron.
Yes.
And the density is improved. So the cost of a battery production is going to go down dramatically.
That's wonderful.
And the density. So now again, that solves, because that's always been the big pushback, right?
Yeah. And lithium is the de facto standard. Here's one fact, though. Lithium, there's only a finite amount on this planet. And it takes quite a bit of strip mining, no better words, to extract it.
Yes.
And if there's solutions that can minimize its usage or use it in combination with other. I've also read that if you put coffee into the electrolyte, it reduces the degrading of the battery over the long haul. And then coffee.
Yeah, and it probably smells better too.
Well, I bet it does. Yeah, because my Tesla, I'm talking about smells.
Yeah.
My Model 3, at times, and you don't know when it's going to do it, it lets loose some sounds that you'd be shocked that a car would do.
Woof.
Yes, I don't. It's wafting. I don't know. It's people turn their heads and look. And I said, "Listen,
what is that?"
It's just it builds up gases
Roll
in the
down.
battery pack.
Yeah,
and it just leads to let them loose.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's no holds barred. It just does it any time. Sometimes it'll do a wolf whistle too.
Oh, God.
It'll announce it before the
Nice.
the exhaustion process.
Okay. Oh, my
great.
goodness. So so exciting things on the energy forefront on
Yes.
that. And a couple quick stories too.
Sure.
Also, Toyota is selling a new hydrogen car that
We've been following Toyota with this.
So this is interesting. This is they're selling the car for $10,000, but
It's dirt cheap.
yeah, it's an
Do they own it at the end?
It's an 80% discount. So are they buying the market?
Yeah.
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 For $10,000. I'll spin the wheel, take a
Some
chance.
people call that dumping.
Yeah.
Especially when you get into foreign countries and
Mhm.
tariffs.
Yes.
They use that. It's called dumping.
Yes.
I don't think that's dumping, though.
No,
I think that's a good deal.
They're trying to buy the market.
But they can improve the product by getting usage. They get data, and by
Correct.
getting data, they can perfect.
Right.
And sometimes people just aren't willing to pull the go button on the on hydrogen, because that's completely different than everything we've dealt with for propulsion systems.
Mm-hmm.
We've dealt with nothing like that.
It's unique, without a doubt. Ford is launching a game-changing new service for electric vehicles, and it's the first time in the industry. So this is
You're perking my ears on this. I'd love to know what it is.
So this is a new the new connection. It's called e-Transit Custom Van with new home charging system for EVs, especially aimed at supporting small and medium enterprises and increasing their productivity while saving them money and benefiting the environment, as reported in Clean Techna. So the Ford's new EV charging system offers not only a home charger and installation, but also comprehensive training management software. So an outfit like, for example, Kevin Sharkey, let's say his cars were all EV, or his vans.
They will come in and help you set the program
They
up.
will set it all up
Isn't that nice?
and administer it for you.
So a really like an enterprise fleet service type thing, where they're well, several of the big box retailers of hardware like Lowe's and Home Depot, they have a pro department where they have specific people that will help fleets and large purchasers of, say, drywall or wood.
Right.
And it's separated from the rest.
That's correct.
Almost like a concierge service.
Yeah, it's a good, well said. Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
Home Depot already offers concierge service. I've heard they've got a painting department that's second to none, and they do all kinds of custom work in there.
You never know what'll happen in that store.
I know it.
Yeah. Anyways, but so let's talk about we got what 10 minutes before we go to break. Let's
dig into what we're gonna
the diesel story,
the meat of it, because it could take up the rest of the show. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it is interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, it's informative. But at the same time, it can be troubling and a big disappointment for people that don't know what they're getting themselves into. And this really is what this is about, and we'll talk about it. Ford has had diesels for many years. In fact, Ford had diesels, and Ford made farm equipment, actually tractors, Ford tractors.
Sure.
Right. They've been involved overseas. In Europe, there's been diesels. They even made a diesel courier pickup, the Ford Courier. Yeah, it was a diesel they offered it. The diesel we're talking about are V8s, 8 cylinders. And the one we're going to talk about was a joint effort from design between Navistar, or International, people interchangeable, and Ford.
Okay.
The history starts like this. In the mid 80s, late 80s, Navistar, they make trucks and medium duty vehicles, had a IDI, which is direct injection, V8, 7.3 diesel that they offered in their vehicles. Well, Ford, being that they are a joint venture, I would say more so on the international side is really the brains and the meat, but the stuff that makes it the diesel was really on the international side. That Ford was more of a more than a reseller, but they certainly weren't at the core level on the design.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
Sure.
So we'll start the diesel adventure with the 7.3. It was not common rail.
7.3
liters.
Okay.
Liters.
Yeah.
Liters. That turned into the 7.3 Power Stroke, and that happened because it became turbocharged. Okay.
You see that on the graphics on the side of the car or the truck.
Now, the 7.3 was a very successful motor, had very few problems. There's one thing, though, that it did have. 2 of the pollution chemicals that would come out the exhaust were starting to become regulated. And with that engine wasn't quite right for the market or for the EPA.
Sulfur, right?
Sulfur, soot, as well as nitrous oxide. Because remember, a diesel doesn't make carbon monoxide. It's not one of the byproducts. Soot, which is what LA had for the longest time with smog. Soot's just dirt. It's not really pollution per se, other than that it can deposit in your lungs and cause breathing problems and make your eyes water and have vision issues. So the 7.3 served its purpose. In fact, there are people that it's highly sought after. If you have a 7.3 Power Stroke pickup truck and it's in beautiful mint condition and good mileage, low mileage on it, you can sell it for more than you paid for it.
Amazing.
In today's dollars. It really holds their value because they are reliable. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the reliability and what to expect from the 6.4. So we just discussed the 7.3. The next iteration, which is a completely fresh design, was the 6.0 Power Stroke.
Okay, so
6.0.
Smaller size.
Now, it is HUI, which is hydraulic electronic unit injection. So high pressure oil pushes the fuel in the combustion chamber. Let's just leave it at that. A diesel has to have high pressure to get it in the combustion chamber due to the high compression that is required to ignite the air-fuel mixture.
Got it.
HUI.
All right.
Caterpillar, now we're going to bring another company into this, invented and patented the HUI system.
No.
So International bought the rights from Caterpillar and joint ventured with Ford.
All right.
So it's just, and Caterpillar is another big equipment manufacturer, because remember, all your earth moving equipment and these gigantic tractors, they all are diesels.
Sure.
Because of, durability and longevity.
And the ability to generate a lot of power.
Yeah, low RPM torque.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that's what makes it ideal for heavy duty equipment.
And the problem and then after the 6.0, which had its share of problems, head gaskets, all kinds of stuff,
Right.
came out to 6.4 Power Stroke. The years we're talking about are 2008 to 2010 on the Ford side.
Nice.
On the international side, that motor is called the Max 47. Up until recently, it was available. Used it in tow trucks, your rollback tow trucks. Many times they've used it, and they're medium duty, big. It'd be like an F650 or a Kodiak from Chevy. It's just a big 4-door rig. They would use the 6.4 engine.
Okay.
International had a little bit more success with it than Ford did. And there's a reason, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And it isn't the base engine, it's the items that are surrounding the engine that made it a little bit less reliable with Ford.
So other ancillary things.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And one internal thing, which is what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
And the reason I say this is once the history's done, we're going to have a case study on a particular customer of mine's vehicle. And we're going to talk about what happened with this vehicle, where we're going with it, and how whenever the discussion of 6.4 liter engines takes place, there's usually finger pointing. And that's a shame.
Yeah.
Engines don't have feelings, nor do vehicles. The only things that have feelings are people.
Yeah.
And people's feelings get hurt when their stuff breaks. They really do.
They're not happy about it.
They're not happy at all.
No.
Okay. So in 2008 is when this came out. And this is the first motor that Ford produced, at least on my knowledge level that I'm aware of, common rail, which is high pressure fuel to the tune of 20,000 PSI is what pushes itself into the combustion chamber. So the combustible material, the propellant, so to speak, for the engine is what is raised from a pressure standpoint to get it into the combustion chamber. Previously, like I discussed, oil was raised or jacked up the pressure to push in the fuel. High pressure oil pushed in the fuel on the Huey, designed by Cat, 7.3, 6.0. Line drawn in the sand. Now we're on common rail. Common rail is high pressure fuel just goes into the cylinder. So it's simplified in a way, but not really made more complicated. Okay. The 6.4 Power Stroke is basically the same block as a 6.0, the generation before, which was 2003 and a half to 2007. Okay. That was how long that lasted. We made stronger and bigger, fatter head bolts because one of the problems with the 6.0 Power Stroke was the head bolts stretched and then we had head gasket failure. When we talk about this case study, we're going to be talking about head gaskets, why we do them, what can happen if they're not done right, and what certainly isn't the causality of the condition that they have currently now with this case study. So this 6.4, is it an engine worth buying on the used market? Unless you know about it, no.
Wow.
No. But can it be a great product? Yes. But you have to do some things to it. If you have a 6.4 Power Stroke and you think a few small to medium-sized repairs is all you're going to be doing, that's not the case.
Guess again.
And that's when the finger pointing starts. And that's when we need a fall guy, a straw man, a patsy. You get what I mean?
Sure.
Lee Harvey Oswald was the patsy down in Dallas.
I think so.
There was other people involved. Well, in this case, if you don't look at the facts that we're talking about right now, it's very easy to point fingers, isn't it?
Sure.
Ignorance can be bliss when it comes to product liability.
Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right. But then you won't, then you can form biased opinions and you won't feel guilty about saying it.
Right. Right.
And that's where ignorance is bliss.
Right.
If you don't know about a product that you own and you're somehow trying to blame your service provider, it doesn't matter whether it's a refrigerator or an automobile or a train for that matter. If you don't know about the history of that technology, what the rest of the world has done with that technology and how they've used it and the shortcomings, you're able to justify in yourself finger pointing.
Yeah.
And it never ends up a good day.
Sure. Just make me happy now.
Yep. And usually you can weed these type of situations out,
Mhm.
not just my industry, but any industry, when you see a persistence for resolution, but not much interest in gathering facts as to the causality.
Yeah.
When you want outcome, and I'm talking immediate outcome from
Right.
persistency with phone calls, showing up in person, harassment, you can pretty much figure this is not about the product. It's about
Service
it's about not having any. It's being low on cash.
right or perception of service. Yeah. Perceptions. Mhm.
I'm saying this because I'm sure we have many people that own businesses that are listening to this radio show, and I can tell you, if you don't pay attention and at least know your product, you're going to get stuck in a situation that similar to what we're talking about, right? If you're an electrician or a plumber or say an air conditioning, and you don't know the product that you sell, for example, brands of air conditioners and what their shortcomings are, because they all have them.
Sure.
You're going to get yourself in a jam when you sell that product to the customer, the end user, if you don't know about what to A, warn them about, and 2, what to prepare them for.
Yeah.
And 3, like in my business, are extended warranties, Frank, available to anyone out there, even aftermarket ones?
Oh, sure.
It requires money.
Yeah.
It requires research.
Yep.
And it requires willing to forego whatever value that money has now and put it into the future.
Right.
So that's interesting, isn't it?
It
That
is.
there are extended warranties out there that can be paid for.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to the 6.4. One of the first issues that we had with the 6.4 Power Stroke you get that, is this was the first generation that we used an active pollution control device to lower emissions on a vehicle, diesel. The first generation for Ford. And it was the DPF, and we've talked about it. That's the big sponge filter that's in the exhaust system that accumulates the soot. And at prescribed, planned times, it is burned off in a secondary combustion process underneath the vehicle. It's like an afterburner. Think of an afterburner on a jet.
Yeah.
This is exactly what it is. An afterburner on a jet airplane, like a fighter, is basically no more than dumping extra fuel into the motor, and it burns down there in the exhaust and provides thrust.
Yeah.
Well, this is what happens with the DPF. You are dumping diesel fuel in the exhaust stroke of the motor. So that's on the out stroke going out to the tailpipe. You're dumping raw fuel.
Wow.
And that raw fuel accumulates downstream, starts a secondary combustion process, and gets in well in excess of 1,500 to 2,000 degrees, and it burns off the soot.
Yeah, wow.
That's how it works.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a good idea to dump raw fuel on the exhaust stroke.
No.
Because what's going to happen to some of that fuel is it runs down the walls of the cylinders. It's going to thin out the oil. You're going to have an oil that's overfull instead of, I'm not burning the oil, I'm making it. And it seems to be getting thinner.
Whoops.
It's raw fuel. And that was number one shortcoming for the 6.4 Power Stroke. Wow. You were getting cylinder walls, pistons with abnormal scuffing and wear on them, bearing failure because of the thinned out liquefied oil with no viscosity or thinner viscosity. And it was a big problem. We were seeing broken crankshafts, pistons, like I say, that were scuffed, not cracked or anything, but just scuffed. Remember the word cracked, because that's going to be a big topic that we're going to talk about on the 6.4. Let's take a break.
All right, we're going to do that, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
We have much more to cover when we return, so stick with us. Hey, how you doing? What's that? No, this is a live show. So, but Todd's not going to take any calls during the show. Yeah, we'll take. All right, we'll stand by. We'll be back.
Stay on. We're going to be live.
We'll be live in about a minute 30 seconds. Yes, stay with it. Stay with me.
We need you. We told the customer that I'm doing a show on it.
I feel honored.
All right, bud. We'll be with you in about a minute 15
Yeah,
seconds.
fine.
All right.
I'm very honored.
All right.
Oh, we're back.
We are back, and we got a caller.
Oh,
on
fabulous.
on our newsmaker line.
This is wonderful.
Go ahead. caller.
Greetings.
Greetings
Hello,
and
Todd.
salutations.
Frank, this is your groupie.
Oh, fabulous. This must be my daughter. No, it's Palm City Charlie.
Yeah,
She was in. My
Yeah,
daughter
yeah,
came in
yeah.
earlier.
It's me. It's me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, I sent a message to Frank. 2004, there was a special order to Stewart Volkswagen. I had seen the Touareg, and I said, if you ever get a diesel, call me. So the special order came in, and the guy that ordered it freaked out at the price.
Mm.
64 grand.
Mm.
So this thing had coach leather
Mm.
and twin turbo V10, TDI diesel.
Yeah.
310 horsepower, 553 foot-pounds of torque.
That's a lot of twist.
This was a beast. It was a beast. 19-inch wheels,
Wow.
air shocks, and a lot of the stuff at that point there was kind of a mess going on within the system a bit.
Uh-huh.
Finally, Stuart Volkswagen's uncle and had somebody fly from Germany to straighten the vehicle out.
Oh, wow.
And this thing, you turn it on, Todd, and the lights would come on, and in the back of the garage, you see the vehicle just rise up.
Oh, wow.
Holy moly.
Wow.
You know?
Holy moly, the beast is alive.
It's alive.
my
It's
God.
alive.
It had, and it had navigation, but if there were discs back then.
Yes. You put a disc in to update it.
Yeah.
Garmin usually was involved in
But it
that.
was a fun vehicle. Pirelli tires.
Of course.
Those are very expensive tires.
From Italy.
6,600 pounds was the beast.
Nice.
Oh, that thing is
6,600.
an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon. You don't want to act upon that one.
Now, when you change the oil, Todd, 18 quarts of oil.
What?
18. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what they told me. Look it up.
That's a lot of oil.
Oh, my Lord.
Can you imagine just the parts bill, just the oil price alone? Because, oil's gone up, oil changes.
Well, that
we
was
have
a
not
long
talked
time
about it.
ago, and I finally got rid of it. I mean, it was so expensive to keep.
I bet.
And this was during the Obama administration, and the price of diesel went up to $5 a gallon.
That's ridiculous.
26 and change gallons was the tank.
Oh my God, 26
You
times
fill
5.
that
That's
sucker
200.
up with
Wow, it
ice.
costs you 150,
And
$180.
and I was working for the Stewart News back then.
Right.
So I'm running around my territory in this beast. My father had a Passat TDI, and he had stopped driving. Charlie, you can use the Passat. So I started using the Passat, and he goes, Charlie, I noticed you're using my Passat too much. Okay.
Let me ask
Oh
you a
my
question,
God.
Palm City
Right.
Charlie. When you were with the Stewart News, were you top dog?
Yeah, well, I increased sales by 40% in
I'd
my
say so.
territory. Maintained it for the 4 years. They begged me to stay. When I was up at the Harper Current in Connecticut, we went into this computer system type thing where the salespeople had to load all their information in the computer. So I was a manager at that point, and I missed all of that.
Yes.
Thankfully, I hate computers. So now I'm with the Stewart News, and they have the same darn system all of a sudden. And I hated it. I hate it. So they begged me to stay. You don't have to do it. Just keep selling. You don't have to do the computer stuff.
Yes.
And I started traveling. I love Rome. Roaming Rome.
Yeah.
Fun.
When you did this in your territory down here, was it your technique or was it your consistency and persistency that you were able to always capture the market?
I love my customers to death, and they became friends. I mean, I'm still friendly with one of my guys down there, a jewelry place.
Yes.
But, and I just cared about my customers. I was creative. Frank knows some. I think.
Well, I
invented a section, and I want the radio stations to do it called Our Town. Look it up, the Harper Current.
I'm going to.
It started as a section called Journey. As a salesperson, everybody had to do a tab. They asked me how many pages. I said 42. Going to be 16, 18. I think I told you this once.
Yeah.
It was 56 pages.
Wow.
They didn't have press time. And then the next year, we talked about it because the idea was Our Town.
Yes.
And that's what they did it. And they did it full run, the whole Harper Current.
Yeah.
It ran for more than 20 years. It made them millions upon millions of dollars.
Wow.
It basically gave, like Crown Car Care, an opportunity to toot your own horn.
Yes. And that was
in
a
a display ad, but you could do that on the radio too. You do a lot of tooting.
Yeah.
And guys, Crown Car Care is great. Todd loaned me his personal car once.
Yes. I've been to your house. I've been to your house, Palm City, Charlie.
I know. Maybe we don't eat Thanksgiving dinner. We like happy pancakes.
And as of what I've heard through the rumor mill is you're buying up your neighborhood.
I'm working on my next door neighbor's house. Well, my house now.
Yes.
And the electrician had a problem. His dad, I guess, is in the hospital. So I said, take the week off.
Sure.
So the electrician has stopped his work.
Oh my goodness.
It'll have an 18 kilowatt Generac. Whoever's renting that house will never run out of power.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a solid concrete house. They poured concrete in.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, that is going to withstand the winds and the severe weather here in Florida.
The guy that lived there said his electric bill was like $80.
Oh, I wish it. My electric bill for one room is $80 than where I live.
Yeah, there's a propane stove.
Wow, okay.
And a propane commercial sized dryer. I mean, the washer and dryer, you could hang a sign out. Wow. Blah, 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 laundromat.
Right.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Interesting.
All right, listen, guys, I'm going to get off.
Thank you, Charlie.
Did you hear about the Tesla knocking the vehicle off the bridge?
Yes, I did. We haven't talked about it. That's interesting.
Minus a tire, minus a wheel.
Wow.
Did you hear that?
No.
I didn't hear about that. The car ran off the bridge is parked in the towing yard next to my Crown Car Care at Cove Road.
Oh, so I think I heard that on the news.
So if anyone wants to see the car, just come over and we'll give you a tour.
Well, let me tell you something. God bless. God said, let me land you on your wheels.
Yes.
In a parking lot.
Yes, because they could have been in the water, to be honest with you.
Die, right?
No. One was thrown
Thank
out
the Lord.
and one was
Thank
strapped
the
in with a
Lord.
belt, but they both lived to tell the
Thank
tale
God.
of the
Thank
Tesla.
God.
Yes,
Yeah, they could write a book,
they could.
put it on the market.
Absolutely.
Take
Talk to
it.
you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's get back in now.
Yeah.
We just talked about the cylinder walls being washed down on the exhaust stroke with this pollution. Let's talk about
With the
one
fuel.
of the
Yeah.
Let's talk about another problem on these. I think you may have picked up on. I said the head gaskets are a common problem on the 6.0, which is the generation before it that runs off Huey, the high pressure oil. The bolts were too thin. Well, they fattened up the bolts. They still don't have enough bolts on that 6.4, and you would get head gasket issues. Okay, just a head gasket. Now remember, a head gasket is nothing more than a seal.
Right.
It's not really part of the motor. All you're doing is attaching cylinder heads to the motor. That's all it is. It's a seal, nothing more, nothing less. You know, keeps the cylinder compression in and the coolant out.
Okay.
I'll repeat that: coolant out, cylinder pressure in. But because a diesel is such high compression, very rarely do you get on cylinder head gasket breaches coolant going into the combustion chamber. Not now on a car or a regular gasoline, you do. You could hydrolock the engine, bend rods, all kinds of things. And you certainly would never shatter or crack a piston with a head gasket.
Right.
You would only, I hope the listening audience understands that a head gasket is not a semi-permeable membrane. It's supposed to be a barrier between combustion and cooling system. And some oil, but not much. Oil just goes up to the lubricate things, but it's a passageway. So it keeps coolant where it's supposed to be, keeps combustion pressure and cylinder combustion process inside the cylinder.
Right.
There's a barrier, a firing ring that goes around it.
Yeah.
If that breaches on a diesel, more than not, and I don't know of any incident, the combustion gas goes out into the cooling system and pushes the coolant out the overflow bottle from excessive pressure, as opposed to engine coolant going into the combustion chamber, because you would hydrolock the motor and get a bent rod or a cracked piston if that was ever to happen. And it doesn't happen, because who wins the battle on pressure? 32 psi on the cooling system or 2,500 psi in the combustion chamber.
Yeah.
We know who wins.
Yeah.
The combustion chamber wins. So
You
the
bet.
gas pushes the coolant out, not the other way around.
Right.
Let's keep that in mind as we progress.
Okay.
Okay, so we have head gasket issues. Now, what's another problem? What are pistons made of, Frank? Aluminum, right?
Yeah.
Aren't they aluminum?
Mostly. Yeah.
Aluminum melts at what temperature?
Well, it's 1600 degrees.
1250
1250. Okay. Yeah.
Fahrenheit.
Okay.
1250. Low.
Yeah.
You hit 1250
Yeah.
and you're liquefied.
Yeah. Okay.
Liquid metal.
All right.
Now, remember that, 1250 degrees. To get to 1250 degrees, for the most part, you would never get there from a cooling system breach. If you had no coolant in the motor, it would seize up. You would never get to that temperature. And if you did, it'd be very shortly, because it's just not going to happen.
Right.
Okay. But what would happen if inside that combustion chamber, and I use that for each cylinder, there's one for each. And that's why we have a head, a cylinder head. It sandwiches the top of the motor and it makes a chamber.
Correct.
A cavity.
Yes.
For the explosion to happen. And valves are in that chamber to open and close to let exhaust gas out and intake in. Now, if we have a combustion process that we know we can't get to 1250 degrees, or else we'll melt the aluminum. We're using for fuel what? Diesel, right? Diesel fuel, high BTU count, and it's controlled by what? The injectors.
Right.
And what did we tell you on this year? They used a common rail, which is high pressure fuel. First generation. Keep that in mind. So we are rising the pressure of the fuel to be able, so it pushes in or goes in itself. Let's also remember, I think it was in 2006, what did the federal government require of diesel fuel to be pretty much free of? Sulfur.
Yeah.
And that was a lubricant.
Ah.
So now we have diesel fuel with no lubrication. We have a combustion chamber that is tops 1250 degrees is all the hotter you want to get it, or else what happens? You crack the piston or you melt the piston. One of the two. Something's going to happen, right? And then you score the cylinder walls because now the piston has expanded and got a crack in it. Now you've got combustion gas going into the oil and the crankcase of the motor, which is hot gas, and it's under big time pressure. What happens? Glow plug harness connectors pop off. Oil starts coming out of everywhere because it's got so much pressure.
Right.
It pushes itself out.
Right.
Now you're starving the engine for oil. You've got runaway combustion. Your thermal the thermal process now is going crazy. And that's if you put too much fuel into it. Too much fuel. Fuel needs to be controlled on a diesel. That's why when you do towing, especially like with a big gooseneck trailer and you have a lot of weight on it, you better watch your exhaust gas temperature. It's important, Frank, or else you could melt pistons and crack them. And that all diesel trucks that are over the road, semi trucks, the big ones that do hauling, always have EGT sensors.
EGT.
Exhaust gas temperature.
Okay.
What doesn't this 6.4 have? It does not have a sensor. So
it's senseless.
You have to play it by ear. Let's take a break and we'll come back.
Okay. All right. We'll do it. All right.
We just got that.
You got that.
A delayed reaction.
All righty. All righty. Make sure you give them a call at Crown Car Care at 781-8000. But we'll be right back, so stick with us. All right, we are back.
We're talking about cracking and melting pistons.
Listening to the Power Stroke Hour.
Yes, on the 6.4.
Yes.
So what are the three things that you need to have happen what we're talking about? Could be a combination of three. It only could be one of them. One, too much fuel. Right? We know the fuel is too much. You have too much, you'll get too hot a temperature and the fire will run out of control, the flame of propagation inside that combustion chamber, and it'll raise the temperature. Okay? Second, too little air. A clogged air filter, a restricted air filter will restrict the air in relative terms to the fuel. So now we have a rich condition. It's going to burn hotter. It's going to, you'll get a runaway thermal event and you'll melt or crack a piston. The time or when it is injected into the combustion chamber. And remember, this is common rail, so there is no fuel pushing it. There's nothing. It's just fuel going in at high pressure.
All right.
And we also know that the fuel has no sulfur and no lubrication.
Yeah. Big problem.
Do you think fuel filter maintenance is a very good idea on this motor? Changing your fuel filters?
I think that's mandatory.
Now, can you imagine if you didn't change it for years?
Ooh.
A couple of years, what would it look like, that fuel filter? In fact, we have some examples. In fact, that case study we're talking about, that was one of the issues. You got to change the fuel filter, people.
Looks like a block of
It's just nasty.
Carbon, right?
It looked like a petrified log.
Yeah,
petrified log.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crumbling the paper that makes up that core, like you showed us on that demonstration the other week on your cabin air filters. It's that same kind of material.
Right.
Okay. Got to change fuel filters, people. Okay. So that will purify or keep the fuel clean, but it doesn't make up for the lack of lubrication.
No.
So what do you have to do? You better do additives, at least on every other tank fill. You better add a capful or two showing what the manufacturer says on the additive for lubricity, lubricant. It's a liquid. You better do it, or else you'll get the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey says, and it won't be good.
No.
You're going to end up with a cracked or melted piston if you don't stick to the maintenance standards that are required of a diesel motor, especially the 6.4. If you don't, what happens is not good. Finger pointing starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and ultimately it resides with who? Whoever's name is on that title.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Whoever owns the vehicle.
We can offer assistance. We can preach it. We can talk on the radio show. But if the owners of these vehicles do not practice what we preach, radios, books, internet, YouTube, you name it,
right,
then you're going to have a problem. So it's too much fuel, not enough air. And when it's put into the combustion chamber, is going to cause cracked or melted pistons.
Yeah.
End of story.
Right.
And when that happens, if you have no lubrication, the injector sticks. If a piece of dirt gets inside that injection and it sticks open, have we met the requirement? Too much fuel? You bet. Too much fuel goes in the combustion chamber and you crack the piston.
Yeah.
Now, what if I told you on the 6.4 that it was a known issue that the piston castings were thin-walled on the top crown and they cracked naturally?
Whoa.
Could that ruin your day if I just told you that you have to lubricate your fuel? You better do your fuel filters. And oh, by the way, the 6.4 has a known problem with the pistons that were from day one.
Wow.
And so big that MAHLE Mall, who's the manufacturer that was subcontracted to make them, was put into a jam on this.
I guess so.
The consistency of the castings is what it was. It wasn't a bad design. It was the consistency and the mill thickness of certain areas of the piston top that created a concentration of heat because it couldn't dissipate properly, and it would crack the pistons.
Good.
Even if you did everything right, your pistons will still crack on a 6.4 randomly.
Wow.
It's rare,
but it'll happen.
But you better know about it because you can prevent it,
yeah.
But you got to know about it. What's the fix? We talked that International had a sister engine. The Max Force 7 pistons didn't have that problem. They're a different design. Ford had Mahl design their piston while Navistar used theirs. What are many 6.4 diesel truck owners using in lieu of the Mahl? Max Force 7. Did I tell you, Frank, that I have a 6.4 diesel? So I'm talking about the truck that I own.
Yeah,
I own that engine.
Right.
Yet I can speak freely and I can speak honestly that there are shortcomings that will make the best shop and the best technician look like they're incompetent. But it's not the case. Know your product before you offer your criticism. Know the product. I know my product. I own it.
Right.
Do I love my 6.4? Yes, I do. It has Max Force 7 pistons. I add lubrication to my fuel. I change my fuel filters, and I always clean my air filter without hesitation. Never has it happened that way with me and my ownership of my diesel. I haven't had any problems.
Right.
And I don't need to knock on wood.
Right.
You know, you don't need to knock on wood when you do it right.
Right.
You better start knocking on wood if you don't change your fuel filters. Let's just say you had a head gasket replaced.
Yeah.
Thinking that was a big repair. And then you find out that's nothing compared to what other people have to do on these 6.4s that don't maintain them.
Yeah.
My goodness. Putting the head gasket in is nothing
compared
to what happens when a piston cracks or melts. Now you're going into the engine, not just the sealing, the little gasket that seals the engine to the cylinder heads.
Right.
That's what a head gasket is. And we know that it only goes one way when they fail.
Right.
When they fail, the exhaust gas only goes out. It never goes in. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
So we have a head gasket issue. We have a piston issue. Another issue that we have on the 6.4, and it's rare, is they had some defective castings on the crankshaft. And the crankshafts will break out at the back of the motor. Especially if you have too much fuel going in at the wrong time. And now is the time to talk about the tuner. Frank, there's devices out there that are emission triggers that will boost the power of a 6.4 power stroke. But when you boost the power, you increase the torque. And what happens inside that combustion chamber that we were talking about that has weak pistons? You're creating a bigger thermal event.
Right.
Now, if can you imagine if you don't change your fuel filters?
Yeah.
You have a dirty air filter. and you have a tuner, and you do towing.
Yeah, what can go wrong?
Oh, I don't know. Something.
A
A
lot
to go
A
wrong.
whole lot of
A
things.
whole lot to go wrong.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
when that happens, I think we talked about finger pointing, and that can happen to the most honest people with the best integrity. It can look like
best of intentions.
It can look like what it isn't.
Right.
And that's when it's a really good idea to do your research and listen to a radio show like the Crown Car Care Radio Hour.
Right.
Because we talk the facts, the truth, and we tell people what to look out for and where for them to do their own research. And I urge every one of you, if you own a 6.4 or want to buy a 6.4, it can be the happiest purchase and the best vehicle you've ever owned. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't take my advice and do your own research and follow what they say, you're going to end up in a boat where you have to replace that motor to the tune of $25,000 to $26,000. Wow. And that's what happens. Wow. If you have dirty fuel filters, don't clean your air filters. You have a tuner and you do towing.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? And we're just about at the end of our show, and we made it right to the end, Frank.
We did. So where can our listeners find you?
We have two locations.
Mm-hmm.
Cove Road. That's if you want to go see the wreck that fell off the bridge. You could go visit that and then visit us.
Nice.
We have a fish tank you can go look at too. Frank from Palm City loves it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Or Charlie. Palm City Charlie.
Yeah.
And that's on Cove Road going on the ocean side. And then we have a location in Palm City on the corner of 42nd Street and 714. Call us 772-781-8000, 772-781-8000.
Righto.
Everyone have a blessed afternoon and a good day, and we'll talk to you next week.
All righty. Thanks a lot. See you next week.